everybody. So it's been 6 weeks. That's right, 6 weeks since TSA agents and other federal employees have not been paid. And Congress just left Capitol Hill for 2 weeks to go on an Easter extended break for 2 weeks. It's their spring break. And while they're gone, obviously nothing is going to get done. So we have to wait for another 2 weeks to see what will become of the Department of Homeland Security funding. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because there are more than 65,000 employees with the TSA that don't get paid, but there are also thousands of employees that work for FEMA, that work for the Coast Guard, and there are 10 sub-agencies outside of the Department of Homeland Security that are in limbo. And that's a problem because not only are we at war with Iran, but we're dealing with lots of existential threats, as you know, that there are things that we don't even know about that take place on a daily basis on our home turf, right? And we all know that airports have been in chaos. And so this is just not sustainable. Let's talk. Welcome to another episode of the Holy Politician Podcast. So I don't know if you recall, but there was just a shutdown last October. And there are lots of people that are just still recouping from that. People that work for the federal government that were not paid for more than a month. And now they're dealing with this again. Could you imagine being a federal employee or any employee that has to show up to work not knowing when you're going to get paid, even though when you become employed, there is an agreement that they are going to pay you for the work that you do, that they're going to pay you on time. And this has gotten out of control where you have members of Congress that think that they can just play around with people's resources. Congress, many times there have been people that have come forward with bills on Capitol Hill that say that members won't get paid if the appropriations are not passed on time. Why is it so hard to bring that bill for a vote? Since they can't agree and they're so at odds, I think that they should hold their own feet to the fire and not get paid unless they make sure that the federal budget is funded and passed. And so, one of the things that I've been talking to people about that they've been complaining about at the airport is the long lines to get through TSA and how much of a drag that is and how inconvenient it is. Some of us have been in those lines, right? Where you have to get to the airport excessively early and then you're waiting for 4 hours in TSA. Watch this clip.
Your flight is now ready for boarding.
Now, did you see where it said there was a placard that said 60 to 75 minutes from here? Wow. Never have I ever waited in a TSA line for 60 minutes. But imagine what it's like to be somebody on the other side of that line, the people that are helping you with your bags and checking and verifying, making sure that nothing that is going to be deadly or harmful gets on an airplane. And so the agent that is supporting these people, they are thinking about, well, how am I going to buy groceries? How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to put gas in my car? Gas is expensive now. It's gone up more than $1 over the past 3 weeks. And so just the fact that they're getting from to and from work is a miracle. Just the fact that they're showing up, we should be grateful, not complaining about the long lines that we have to wait in because these people aren't getting paid, right? And so let's really focus on the heart of the matter, which is human beings, their well-being, their livelihood, which has been at risk for the last 6 weeks. I want you to take a look at this clip.
Really struggling, and again, they're facing dire financial straits. These are individuals that are living, like many Americans, paycheck to paycheck. And this is the third shutdown over the past 6 months. We have individuals sleeping in their cars. Some individuals also are drawing blood to afford to pay for gas to get to work. So again, these are dire impacts to our financial, to officers financially. And this is going to have knock-on effects also long term to attrition and to recruitment, frankly. We saw an uptick of 25% attrition after the last shutdown. And so this is going to continue and worsen, not get better, get worse if we don't get a resumption of normal operations.
So where does the funding currently stand? Well, the answer is in limbo. Apparently, the president signed some kind of executive order to pay TSA agents. But what about everybody else? What about the Coast Guard? What about FEMA? What about all of the other outstanding organizations and humans that aren't getting paid that are part of the Department of Homeland Security? So the appropriations is still in limbo. The Senate has been trying to come up with a plan over the past several days, and negotiations in the Senate are being led by this woman, Senator Katie Britt. You may remember her. She gave the Republican response to a State of the Union address a few years back when President Biden was in office. And so Senator Britt has been leading these negotiations among Republicans and a few moderate Democrats. And she's the chair of the Homeland Security Subcommittee, right? So TSA sits under her purview. And so, in order for a decision to be made on the Department of Homeland Security budget, there has to be at least 60 senators out of the 100 that will vote in the affirmative. But that's hard to do when you've got 53 Republican senators that typically vote the same way on everything and 45 Democrats that are voting the same way, right? Which is in contrast to the way Republicans are voting. And so 53 versus 45, and you got a couple of independents in there that typically vote with the Democrats. And so Democrats are saying, we're not passing anything until you defund ICE, until you put all of these restrictions and criteria in place. While Republicans are saying, we're willing to make a few concessions, but we're not willing to do things like stopping agents from wearing masks or really just prohibiting the use of funding for, stopping and basically checking to see who is supposed to be here and who is not supposed to be here. At the end of the day, that is their job. They are immigration's customs enforcement. That is their job. And I was talking to somebody who is an American citizen that has lived abroad in other countries, and she said unequivocally that when you live in other nations, when your visa expires, they will come knocking on your door looking for you, and they will not give you a chance to stay in that country. They will deport you in 2.5 seconds. And so, why is it that in America we think that people should just be able to stay here illegally as long as they want? And that's essentially what the Republicans are arguing is that you can't do this in other countries and you're not going to do it here. And the ironic thing about it is that Democrats used to say the same thing years ago. You can hear President Obama saying this, and even President Bill Clinton saying that immigration needs to be enforced. President Obama deported so many illegal aliens. Like the record is just in the probably millions of illegal immigrants that he deported, or maybe thousands. I'll have to double check it. But the reality is, why is it all of a sudden that we want to clamp down on sending people back to their home countries? Now, there's some parameters and other things that we need to take into consideration, but you can't just go to any country outside of the US and think that you're just going to plant your flag there and stay there. They will send you right back, right? And so we've got this impasse, which is nothing new in the United States Congress, where they just can't agree to pass hardly any legislation. And so while they're at odds, you've got these agencies and human lives that have bills to pay and workers that are suffering. And please understand that there are implications far beyond what we can imagine, right? The security of our country is important. The safety of our nation is important. Like when I wake up in the morning, I thank God that I was able to wake up without hearing bombs landing or with my electricity still being on because nobody has like messed up with the power grid. Like I am grateful that I can wake up in the land of the living in the United States of America. And we so often take our freedoms for granted. People can't tell you the number of people that I've heard complaining about the length and the amount of time they waited in a TSA line, but not saying anything about how they feel bad that these people aren't getting paid. And so we need to think, where do our priorities lie? And we are a privileged nation. We're so privileged, we can't even see our privilege. We can't even see it. And that is concerning, where you get to this point, and I'm throwing myself in this bucket along with everybody else, where you just expect certain things to happen because you, over the years, we've just accumulated this deep level of privilege. And then reality becomes distorted because we think that, first of all, we should have everything at the speed of light. We shouldn't have to wait for anything. And the internet has taught us that. Artificial intelligence has taught us that. The way that some of us have been raised has been taught. Microwaves have taught us that, right? We should be able to have everything at the speed of light. But what is the cost for that? The Bible talks about counting the cost. And too many of us are not really doing that. There are implications for the decisions we make in this world and the things that we ignore and the things that we allow. And sometimes when you're watching these people on Capitol Hill, it seems very unserious, which is language that they've adopted. It's like, is this reality TV? Am I watching a movie? No, this is stuff that is really happening. These people are constantly blaming the other side and twisting the truth so that you can think the other side is at fault when both sides need to come together, need to meet in the middle, and do what they need to do on behalf of the American people. So continue praying for godly leadership in our country. Pray for there to be breakthrough in the hearts and the minds of our political leaders and elected officials. Pray that God would send godly leaders to Capitol Hill that would remain there, that wouldn't get weary in well doing, that would stand their ground and form coalitions where work can actually be done and bills can be passed. And there are a few coalitions there. But because the noise of the outsiders or the far left or the far right people tends to bubble up and be louder, those coalitions of minds and hearts that meet in the middle, sometimes those coalitions are nobody hears them. And people turn a deaf ear and a blind eye to the true work that they're trying to get done. So pray for the senators, the men and women on in the House and the Senate that are trying to meet in the middle to bridge the gap so that policy can get passed that would truly benefit our nation. So I appreciate you watching another episode of the Holy Politician podcast. Keep praying for godly leaders to rise up in this time so that truth can truly be seen and God can be glorified in the earth. Thanks again for watching. Take care and God bless.